All right, let's talk about the regulations. So, DOJ came out and circulated some pretty tough-nosed regulations. Then they pulled them back, and something tells me it wasn't because they got a bunch of protest letters from the Second Amendment community. Let's go to John. What was your take on the regulation pullback, and what do you think is going to happen? What direction do you think this is going to take?
All right, so for those of you who don't know exactly what we're talking about, I think in the last 2 weekends of December, DOJ proposed or issued their high-capacity magazine regulations and then their proposed assault weapons regulations. And within those regulations, they dealt with a lot of different statutes and the laws, but it was their interpretation of what the law states or what the statute actually says, and also their interpretation of how they're going to enforce these laws. So anyone who saw these had a little bit of a freak out moment, especially when you're considering, oh, I'm going to register my now assault weapon as an assault weapon. You found that under their proposed regulations, you couldn't take your bullet button off and you couldn't make any alteration to the firearm even after it was registered as an assault weapon. Both of these regulations have been withdrawn. Now, I know with the magazine proposals, there was a public comment period. Every letter was submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, and they withdrew those because there was a harsh public backlash in the public comment, and those actually do have an effect when there are public comment periods in the processes that they have to go through. They do matter, so don't ever not submit something like that if you have the opportunity to. They have to record these. They go into the administrative records of these processes, and they are a part of the record when you do that. With the assault weapon regulations, they were submitted in a different format, so there wasn't a public comment period, but there was still harsh backlash. My interpretation of this is that the DOJ was trying to figure out how heavily they could regulate under these new laws. And they, for lack of a better word, they were just throwing everything up against the wall, seeing what sticked, and seeing how the public reacted to the laws. Now, they have to submit new regulations, and that is required by law. I'm unaware of any time limit that they have other than they have to submit them this year. So I think that they're going to come out with new ones, or actually no, they're going to come out with new ones, and we don't know what they're going to say. They could be better, they could be the same, or they could be worse. And we'll have to make that fight when it comes to it. I know that there have been demand letters and actually a lawsuit filed by the Calguns Foundation regarding their stretch of an interpretation of these new laws, because it was a gross overstep of their authority to literally create new categories of law and also just new requirements under the law that the statute said nothing of.
And what I've seen these bureaucracies do is they publish something that's terrible on many fronts. Then they look at some of the letters that they get back in the rulemaking process and what they hear from attorneys and groups on the outside, and they take all that criticism and all the threats of lawsuits, and then they tighten it up, and in some ways they expand on how bad it is, in other ways it may be a little bit better, but the thing that they want to avoid is getting these regulations tossed out in court, because they know that a legal challenge is coming, and you know, this is the game they play. So don't read into anything that they did in terms of taking back the regulations as a good sign. It actually might be just part of the standard process of still trying to get the worst case regulations enforced at the end of the day.
Yeah, they do refine their system, and they will come back with more. And that's what I meant when they're just throwing it on the wall to see what sticks. They want to see what they can get away with.
Any talk about the timeline on the new regs? I mean, I'm sure they've been hit up because obviously
unfortunately they have no
requirement.
time restriction in when they have to submit. They don't have to submit a new regulation within 10, 20, 30 days. So I have not heard of a time frame or even a general release date of these new proposals. So
I was actually surprised that they moved so quickly, and they did it over Christmas, right? Wasn't it December?
Yeah, I believe the magazine regulations were over Christmas weekend, and the proposed assault weapons regulations were submitted on Friday night of New Year's.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's full transparency. Don't worry about it. You're not focused on anything else. Okay, let's go on to the next topic. Let's talk about storage of firearms as all.
Without someone doing something about it, it's not going to get any better.